Hello everyone.
This is with the old shocks. It's not that bad.
But it isn't that great either. After replacing the rear KYB gas adjust shocks, it's time to replace the ancient Midas shocks that were up front.
This is just a 1/2-inch socket. It's got these two little bolts that hold the top of the shock. So there's two studs on the bottom of the shock that protrude through here. There's a nut here, and there's a nut where it can't be seen back here. It can't be seen and it's difficult to access, but it can be done. I learned that it can be done when I did the other side. This is the second side I'm doing. It'll be kind of hard to get anything on the backside. This is just a rubber grommet and it has a steel washer under it. There it is. There's the grommet, there's the washer. Alright, now it's a little trickier to get onto that nut on the back stud, but it can be done. This is just a regular socket, it's not a deep socket or anything. I can get a little knocker loose in there now because it's sliding down. In other words, there's a space between the base of the shock and the top of the shock mount, so I can get in there with the knocker loose. And that made it easier. These shocks actually limit the suspension travel, so while the car's jacked up and the suspension is hanging, these shocks are what keep it from hanging even more. It's hanging on the shocks. And there it is. The real trick is going to be getting the rubber retainer up back there, follow it by a flat washer, then a lock washer, and then a nut. So it's doable, and I'll show you how I do it. It's an old Midas shock. So the reason I'm changing these front shocks isn't because these shocks were necessarily bad.
but because I had a bent shock in the rear, so I changed those with KYB gas adjust shocks. And now I'm putting a pair of KYB gas adjust shocks into the front. So this starts with putting the rubber grommet on the two studs that are on the bottom there. And then finagling this down in there. And I believe it landed in the holes. And it didn't. Okay, there it is. It landed in the holes. I was looking. So first a new grommet on the bottom to match the one on the top. Flat washer under the grommet. A lock washer under the flat washer. And there's no threads showing. So I actually had to jack this up a little bit. I jacked underneath the backing plate and put a 2x4 under here blocking because the shock wasn't low enough for everything to fit onto the stud. Basically, this is the limit that this shock will allow the suspension to drop when it's fully installed. Okay, so there's the rubber grommet, the washer, and the lock washer. And now the nut. Okay, that's very snug. Before I finish tightening that up, I'm going to get the back one started and tightened. Okay, so now first the grommet goes up there onto the stud. Oh, and it's not tight enough just to stay. All right, there it is. And then the flat washer goes over that. It's staying, luckily. And so what I did here is I wrapped some black tape, electrician's tape, around the nut with the lock washer right next to it. So I'll be able to slide this up in there with the socket and get it started. Feels like it's starting. It is. I don't think there's any way you can do it with just reaching up in there. Just using a 6-inch extension, 3/8 drive ratchet, and a 1/2-inch socket. That seems pretty tight. And now I'll finish tightening this. Yeah, I think that's good. It might be better if there was a jam nut behind it to keep it from loosening. But that should be good. Now I'll just jack this up just a little bit. Just enough to get the wooden block out. It also has to be jacked up high enough so that you can turn this and it'll actually come up here. So I'm going to jack it just a little more. So normally these bolts hold the top of the shock in place, but these ears on this thing are never wide enough to my satisfaction. The bolt always ends up on the edge of the slot. So I'm going to help things out a little bit with a flat washer on top. That should help it be a little more secure, I would think. Flat washer there, and a flat washer here. Let's see if this will center it up. Not quite. That's real close. All set there. So you can see on this other side, which I already did, that those ears don't really come out far enough. At least they're not far enough out to my liking. So I'm going to revisit this and add a couple flat washers over here too. That's better. I think this car is sitting up higher now on these shocks. But look at this. That's a firm ride. Thank you for watching. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.